Welcome back to the Sports News Analysis YouTube page. It's Tuesday, December 4th, 2012, and we're here with our daily sports talk podcast. The focus of today's episode will be on the AFC and NFC playoff pictures, kind of breaking it down team by team, schedule by schedule for teams that are in contention here, and letting you know how we see things unfolding. Some pretty interesting scheduling situations going on here in both the AFC and NFC, which we'll get to in a second. As always, you can hit us up at S News Analysis. That's at S News Analysis on Twitter. We're on there all day and night. We do some previews of games. Well, we actually preview every game from a betting perspective and from a news perspective. So we're checking out our Twitter feed. But getting back into the AFC and NFC playoff pictures, we'll take it conference by conference here. First with the AFC. The Texans, the only one-loss team in the AFC. They have a 2-game lead on everyone else. We think they find a way to at least split their last 4 games and go to 13-3 minimum, and we think they're solidified into that 1 seed. Now this is where everything starts to get a little muddled. Seeds 2 through 4, so those are the division winners. The other 3 division winners outside of the Texans. All 3 of them sit at 9-3 right now. The Patriots, the Ravens, and the Broncos. The Patriots have already clinched their division. The Broncos have already clinched their division. And we think the Ravens will find a way to win their division. But as far as the seeding between those 3 teams goes, you have the Patriots, who have the Texans and 49ers in back-to-back weeks, and the Dolphins and the Jags to finish up. They have the Jags in Week 16, the Dolphins the last week of the season. I like the Patriots to split those 4 games and go to 11-5. So we have the Patriots at 11-5, winners of the AFC East. Next, the Broncos. And if you look at the Broncos' schedule earlier in the season, as was much talked about, was very front-loaded. As a result, the end of their schedule is rather easy. They have the Ravens, Oakland this week, the Ravens, the Browns, and then the Chiefs. At minimum, we see them going 3-1 in those games. They'll be heavily favored in 3 of those games. We like them to go 3-1 down the stretch and move to a record of 12-4. The Ravens, they have the toughest schedule down the stretch of these 3 teams. They play the Broncos, as we mentioned before. They play the Redskins next week, and they close up with the Giants and the Bengals. We'll be generous here and give the Ravens a split of those 4 games. So we have them at 11-5 as well. So we have the Broncos at 12-4 in the 3 seed. And then the Pats and Ravens at 11-5. Remember, the Ravens beat the Patriots earlier this season. So we have the Ravens as the 3 seed, and the Pats as the 4 seed. So again, we have the Texans as a 1, the Broncos as a 2, getting the byes, the Ravens as a 3, getting it over the Patriots as by way of their victory over them early in the season, and then we have the Patriots at the 4. As far as the wild card situations go, that win the Colts had last week was so big, and I'll tell you why. The Colts are 8-4 right now, a game up on Pittsburgh and Cincinnati for that first wild card spot. It's coming down the stretch. They have the Texans twice, the Chiefs, and the Titans. One of those Texans games, those 2 Texans games are 2 of the last 3 games of the season, which one of those, the Week 17 game, is probably definitely not going to mean anything to the Texans. And with the way they're going, the Week 15 game might not mean much either. So it would depend how the Texans kind of play that coming down the stretch here. But at minimum, and then the other 2 games for the Colts are against the Chiefs and the Titans. At minimum, we see the Colts going 3-1 in this 4-game stretch here. So we like the Colts to end up at 11-5 on the season and be firmly in that 5 seed in the AFC. Now the 6 seed between Pittsburgh and the Bengals, this is going to be interesting as we head down the stretch here. These 2 teams, more so the Bengals, have a very tough schedule coming down the stretch, and obviously this Roethlisberger injury looms large over this last playoff spot in the AFC. And as we head down the stretch here, the Bengals have the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Steelers, and then the Ravens in Week 17. Again, Do the Ravens need that game in Week 17? That's going to be a huge determining factor. But a big game, obviously, in this whole situation is that Week 16 matchup between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. A lot will be decided in that game, we feel. They both have games against the Cowboys left. Pittsburgh also has the Chargers and the Browns. We actually like Pittsburgh, okay, outside of that Bengal game, to go 3-0 in those three games. So right there we have Pittsburgh at a minimum, okay, a minimum of 10 wins. All right, we have Pittsburgh at a minimum of 10 wins. And then we have the Bengals, have the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Steelers left. That is a tough down the stretch for this team who has played very well this season and has come back when people thought their season might have been done. But we actually see the Bengals going 1-3 in this stretch, and because we think the Ravens will have something to play for on that last week. We see the Bengals going 1-3 down the stretch, including a loss to the Steelers in Week 16. So we actually think the Bengals are going to slip up a bit here and go 8-8, mostly due to their tough schedule. So we like the Texans as a 1 seed. The Pats, Ravens, and Broncos battling out for the 2 through 4. We see the Broncos as a 2, Ravens as a 3, Pats as a 4, and then the Colts as a 5, and we see Pittsburgh sneaking into that 6th slot. We won't even get into if Pittsburgh and Cincinnati collapse those 5 and 7 teams below them. I mean, that's just getting into too much right now. We'll save that for a later date if it does happen. But that's how we see the AFC playoff picture unfolding. As far as the NFC goes, similar to the Texans, Atlanta's the only one-loss team. So we have them penciled in or penned in as the number 1 seed and having home field advantage throughout the playoffs. As far as the other divisions go, the 2 seed, we're not in love with the 49ers, but they have a pretty easy schedule coming down the stretch. And also, based on the other teams and the other teams' schedules, we think that the 49ers will do enough to kind of lock down that 2 seed and win the NFC West, obviously. So we have Atlanta as the 1, the 49ers as the 2. Now the 3rd and 4th seeds for the other 2 division winners, we think whoever wins the NFC North will get the 3 seed. Both teams are at 8-4 right now. The Bears have the Vikings, the Packers, the Cardinals, and the Lions down the stretch. The Packers have the Lions, the Bears, the Titans, and the Vikings coming down the stretch. Not very difficult schedules for either team heading down the stretch. So we see this division coming down to that Week 15 matchup between the Packers and the Bears. We think it's really that simple, and I hate to break it down in such simple terms, but we really see it coming down to that. We like the Packers to pull out a win versus the Bears in Week 15. So we have the Packers actually running the table and going to 12-4 and locking up the 3rd seed. And the Bears at 11-5 locked into that first wild card spot. As far as the NFC East goes, we think this division will again only get 1 team into the playoffs this year. And if you didn't watch last night, the Redskins with an impressive win over the Giants. We don't mean impressive by the glitz and glamour of RG3 and him putting up big numbers. If anything, RG3 showed you yesterday he can manage a game when he needs to and not make that big mistake, which I think is important for the maturation of a young quarterback. And we'll see if they talk about that today on all the highlight shows and NFL Lives and shows of this nature. But with the Redskins defense was impressive last night in a 17-16 win. So how that division looks right now is the Giants are at 7-5. The Cowboys are at 6-6, and the Redskins are at 6-6. All have pretty difficult schedules coming down the stretch. The Giants have the Saints, the Falcons, the Ravens, and the Eagles down the stretch. The Cowboys have the Bengals, the Steelers, the Saints, and the Redskins in the last game. The Redskins have the Ravens, Browns, Eagles, and Cowboys coming down the stretch. As far as the Giants go, we see the Giants getting a split of their last 4 games to go to 9-7. And they don't have a game with the Redskins or Cowboys, which is interesting heading down the stretch here. The Cowboys, Bengals, Steelers, Saints, and the Redskins, at minimum, it will give them a split there. So we'll have them at 8-8. As far as the Redskins go, down the stretch with the Ravens, the Browns, the Eagles, and the Cowboys, we actually like the Redskins to beat the Cowboys at home in that last Week 17 game, because quite frankly, we've seen Tony Romo and the Cowboys screw up that last game of the season too much to count on them. We see the Redskins going 3-1 down the stretch, so we have them at 9-7. And to be honest, we haven't figured out the tiebreakers that would ensue at that time. But we have the Giants and the Redskins tied at 9-7, and I know they split their regular season series. So it would come down to, I believe, division record and then conference record if they're still tied there. I have both of them at 9-7 coming down to tiebreakers to get into that 4 seed in the playoffs. As far as that other wild card goes, so right now I have Atlanta as a 1, the Packers at 12-4 as a 2. All right, sorry, the Niners at 12-3-1 as a 2. The Packers at 12-4 as a 3. And the Giants Redskins tiebreaker winner as a 4. As far as the wild cards go, I like the Bears to finish at 11-5 and lock up that first wild card pretty soon, actually. We think they'll have their playoff position solidified pretty early, and they'll just be battling out with the Packers for the division coming down the stretch. But the Bears as a 5 seed, and then the 6 seed, which we feel is a lock now, especially given their win last week against the Bears. That's why we were saying yesterday how much of a big win that was for the Seahawks. They have by far, if any team left in the AFC or NFC, they have by far the easiest schedule heading down the stretch. We think you'll hear a lot of people talking about this today and when they dissect this playoff picture. The Seahawks have the Cardinals, the Bills, the 49ers, and the Rams. They'll be heavily, maybe not heavily, but they'll be favored in 3 of those 4 games and are better than 3 of those 4 teams they're going to play. So we like the Seahawks to go 10-6 and be in that second wild card spot in the NFC. So again, Atlanta with the 1, 49ers with the 2, Packers with the 3, the Giants Redskins tiebreaker winner with the 4, the Bears in the 5, and the Seahawks with the 6 seed in the NFC. So that's how we see the playoffs kind of breaking down here as we head down the last 4 games of the regular season. It's been a great season so far, and based on these matchups that we went through, a lot of these teams in the playoff picture still have to play each other. So it should be an exciting last 4 weeks. We'll be back tomorrow with some MLB, Major League Baseball hot stove talk. It's been kind of a little bit under the radar. No big splash signings as of yet, at least, as we sit here on Tuesday morning. But we'll break down some of the moves that happen and who we feel so far are the winners and losers from the winter meetings down in Nashville. But we'll catch you tomorrow. Let us know what you think of our playoff predictions here, either on the comments here or, again, on Twitter, at SNewsAnalysis, at SNewsAnalysis. Opinion and debate are always welcome. Have a good day, and we'll catch you tomorrow.